Hello there, civilians of the internet. On December 14th, 2025, a mass shooting took place at a Hanukkah celebration near Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. Families were gathered for a Jewish holiday event when two gunmen opened fire. At the time of recording this MP4 file, at least 15 people have been killed, including a child, and dozens more were injured. I'm sure if you've clicked on this MP4 file, then you're already aware of the scenario, but I intro it with that because I have to make it very clear. Before anything else, violence against civilians is wrong. Targeting people for who they are is wrong. And there is no sort of justification that can be justificationized for it, ever. Now, I'll be honest, it is unfortunate that I am filming a video like this, because I do believe the focus should always be on the victims in this situation. But unfortunately, because those in power are trying to poop propaganda from such a horrifying situation, not only do we need to take a closer look at how this is being weaponized, but also if there are other factors that need to be defactored. Because it is important to note that Netanyahu came out a few months ago with a very unique statement. Let's take a close look at what this devil said a few months ago. History will remember Albanese for what he is, a weak politician who betrayed Israel and abandoned Australia's Jews. Because if you didn't know, Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, recognized Palestine as a state just a couple of months ago. Of course, the immediate reaction that we all had as functioning human beings is, how dare he? How dare he recognize that there is a Palestinian state? How dare he recognize that that country should be a country and was a country before genocidal maniacs occupied it? But not only has he betrayed the fraudulent manufacturing of that country, but he's also betrayed the Australian Jews. Because of course, by recognizing that is not real is not real, you are betraying all Jews around the universe. At least that's what Netanyahu wants you to believe. Now you might be wondering, Ahmed, how does this connect to what you described in the beginning of this video? Well, it's important to note because this seems more like a threat. Netanyahu is coming out here and saying, not only have you betrayed the Jewish people, but almost inciting that they're also going to pay for betraying the Jewish people. And of course, because the two individuals that conducted this horrific shooting are supposedly Islamified individuals, I mentioned this in the early spawning of this video because my goal with this MP4 file is to encourage you to have some sort of a political consciousness. The families and the innocent people that are affected by this are always going to be the victims. They are always supposed to be the focus of atrocities like this. But due to the weaponization of this situation, it makes you think, should I be taking this violent, vicious attack at face value, or is there something deeper behind the covers? It is important to know that Netanyahu has said these things because it connects to the later stages of this video. And I want you to keep it in mind. As soon as this attack occurred, the influencers that are getting paid $7,000 by the Is Not Really government took to Twitter to re-emphasize the fact that the perpetrators of this are just following what their faith says. And I already made a video about this a couple of weeks ago about the agenda that is being pushed by the higher ups to create a division between the West and Muslims. And even though Muslims are not a majority of the population, it is very clear that they are trying to make Muslims the enemy when they are very clearly not the enemy. Now, it's important to note that anyone can claim to be Muslim, anyone can go and commit something horrific and say they are Muslim, but that doesn't necessarily reflect the teachings of the religion. And before the Islamophobes start dribbling their fingerlings maliciously at their keyboard to confess to me that these verses say that Muslims should commit violent crimes, I know you're verse farming. And if you read the context of those verses, you'd know they don't say that. And the reality is, you can do that with any book. If you take a line from a Dr. Seuss book out of context, he probably blatantly tells you to annihilate a family of squirrels, when in reality, he was just talking about how long his hat truly is. Some of these sold out influencers took to X to make sure that they actually get their paycheck from Is Not Real at the end of the month. Imagine getting a Muslim to report on an Islamic terrorist attack where Muslims mass murdered innocent people. Well done, Channel 9. Read the room. Unbelievable. This is such phenomenal logic, and I love how this is an issue when it's Muslims, but when a Christian commits a crime and a Christian reports on that crime, it's not an issue. But no, you're right. This is like salt baying salt in the wound. Just putting a Muslim in front of somebody's face after supposedly Muslims committed a crime. But she's not the only one on the payroll. There are many, many more. This morning, 2,000 Jews were gunned down by Islamic terrorists in Australia. This afternoon, Intifada took to the streets of Birmingham, calling for the ethnic cleansing of Jews and promising to honor their martyrs. This is what pure evil looks like. 2,000 Jews were gunned down. Remember at the beginning of the video when I said 15 people lost their lives? Well, apparently this tweeter just got super excited by the shillings that were going to appear in her bank account that she didn't even mind spreading such unhealthy misinformation. And misinformation population is always unhealthy. It went from 15 to 2,000. And this is the issue. I know you're getting paid to poop propaganda, but you're actually taking away from the innocent civilians, from the victims of the situation by making that attack face inflation. And this just proves, as a Muslim, I care more about your cause than you care about your cause. You are taking away from the true victims of anti-Semitism. Now, it is important to note that there is a hero in this story, because a video was filmed of a man running towards the shooter and jumping on him and taking the gun away from him, which probably saved a lot of lives. I'm not going to say the religion of the man just yet, because Netanyahu came out immediately after the attack and confessed the identity of this man. And of course, like always, with no proof, as long as his mouthful region can manufacture it, will be said.
ראינו את הרוע בשפלותו, וראינו גם גבורה יהודית בשיאה. אני ראיתי בדרך הנה סרטון של יהודי שמתנפל על אחד המרצחים, שומט ממנו את הנשק ומציל מי יודע כמה
So you heard it first from the guy who looks up to a certain Austrian painter. And obviously he doesn't say that, he just embodies it through his actions. The man was Jewish. End of discussion. Well, breaking news. The man is not Jewish. The man is a Muslim. I know. So unfortunate. Ahmed al-Ahmed, at least it's good to be an Ahmed, tackled and disarmed one of the Bondi Beach shooters, saving lives before being shot twice. He underwent surgery and is recovering in hospital. Can somebody please put a fan cam? Well, I'm not a fan. I'm actually a foe. Can somebody get a faux cam reaction of Netanyahu reacting to the dude not being Jewish and actually being a Muslim? This is genuinely what I imagine his reaction to be like.
Somebody contact Mr. Beast, tell him we will pay him everything. Just ask him, does he love Israel? He has to say, I love Israel for the camera.
Sir,
what do you want?
the hero, he is not Jewish, he is Muslim.
No.
Should we blame it on Hamas?
No. Okay, Erica, go get the keys and unlock Jeffrey from the basement. Epstein knows a thing or two about identity fraud. Let's see if we can change this guy's identity from Muslim to Jewish.
Isn't it very ironic that a Muslim ended up occupying the headline? I mean, that was just not a part of the script. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist. I like to look at factorials and really analyze them and try and connect the dots. But we as a society need to start noticing. We need to notice that we are pawns in a very big chess game. And I know that sounds like the intro to any sort of conspiracy theory show, but you need to start noticing the little details. Now, I'm not saying this whole operation was a psyop, but there's so much questionability that needs to be questioned around it. And it starts with the headlines. It starts with the wording in which the news reports on different scenarios. Because when a so-called Muslim conducts an attack, it's immediately labeled as a terrorist attack. But when the same attack is conducted by an un-Muslim, that villain is immediately labeled as an individual that was fighting tribes of demons. And if you don't start noticing it, you'll never notice it. And I'll show you the comparison right here. Because AP News wrote an article about the devastating attack that occurred in Sydney, but they also wrote an article about the devastating attack that occurred at Brown University just yesterday as well. And even though both of these are attacks on innocent civilians and are horrible, look at the difference in wordage that they whip out to describe these two situations. A shooter dressed in black killed at least 2 people and wounded 9 others at Brown University on Saturday during final exams on the Ivy League campus. Pretty standard stuff. Dude just went in, killed 2 people, and injured a bunch. I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. But then when somebody who's labeled as a Muslim conducts an attack as well, it's described very, very differently. 2 gunmen opened fire during a Hanukkah celebration on Sydney's Bondi Beach, killing 15 people, including a child, officials said Monday, in what Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called an act of anti-Semitic terrorism that struck at the heart of the nation. The shooters were father and son, authorities said. Did you notice the focus on quoting the Prime Minister of Australia, calling this a terrorist attack, versus them not mentioning anything malicious? Not even terrorism. I'm not asking you to even refer to that as terrorism. Nothing remotely malicious about gunning down people at a university. Now, it might not seem like a big deal, but subconsciously this plays a very big role in fulfilling the stereotype prophecy of labeling Muslims as terrorists.
It's in their book. Trust me, I've read their verses out of context and it's in their book.
Now that you have a general understanding of what is going on, let's take a look into the intricacies and details of this very suspicious attack that took place. Ben-Gvir, who previously served as the Minister of National Security and is not real, which makes it seem like he's a very sophisticated and noble person, which nobody in a government like that can truly be. But let this not distract you from the fact that Ben-Gvir is a baby deactivating enthusiast. Yes, you heard me right. He supports the deactivation of innocent women and children due to the fact that they're Palestinian. Let this not distract you from that fact. But of course, because he is a human, well, that's up for debate. He reacted to the attack like most humans would. No, not sending condolences to the families, but shifting the blame on recognizing that Palestine should be Palestine. Anti-Semitic terrorism knows no borders, but the blood of the murdered is on the hands of the Australian government, which announced recognition of a Palestinian state and legitimized terrorism against Jews. The far-right minister argues in a statement expressing support for the local Jewish community. This is a Zionist, and there's a big difference between a Zionist and a Jew. And I feel the need to re-emphasize that fact because I know Jewish people, I'm friends with Jewish people, and this mythical mammoth does not represent them. Imagine that, a massacre occurring against people that you supposedly care for, and your immediate statement is, this is on you guys, for recognizing that Palestine has the right to exist. I guess I'm asking for too much from a guy who says that the deactivation of a Palestinian is good for society. The shooters that conducted this atrocious attack are Sajid Akram and Naveed Akram. And there's been a lot of speculation online about the identity of these two individuals. Now, there hasn't been much information about Sajid Akram, who supposedly is the villainous father of this villain, but the only information that is available about Naveed Akram, at least from the mainstream news outlets, is this. Naveed Akram appeared to have been tagged in a 2022 social media post stating that he had passed his Quran studies at the Al Murad Institute in Heckenberg, Western Sydney. Now, this image has been thrown around to create the connection that the culprit for his crimes is the Quran, because he has read the Quran, he studied it apparently. Therefore, this is the reason as to why he conducted these crimes. Which then makes me pose the question, if you've truly read the Quran, but for those that haven't, if everyone that reads the Quran understands what supposedly the news wants to insinuate this individual understood, which, by the way, he didn't understand anything, why aren't there more terrorist attacks? Why doesn't this occur just a lot more often by a lot more Muslims? And why is it that when typically these attacks occur, there's just a lot of questions that are left unquestioned? Why is it that the Brown University shooting is not getting nearly as much media attention as this shooting? Why is it when Brendan Tarrant, the perpetrator of the Christchurch mosque shooting that occurred in New Zealand in 2019, conducted this act of violence, it wasn't connected to the Bible or the fact that he was Christian, but was simply shoved under the cover as just being a white supremacist? But this is the evidence that I just simply cannot deny. Sydney gunmen, identified as father and son, reportedly possessed ISIS flag. I mean, how can I possibly disprove this? They have the merch. They have the ISIS merch. They always have the ISIS merch. I'm sorry, this is becoming a canon event at this point. Every time somebody who is a so-called Muslim conducts a horrific act, they always end up finding a ISIS flag in bro's room or something like that. We invaded his dorm and it was just covered with ISIS flags. I mean, what is wrong with these people? But one of the notions that is being really notioned around the shooter, something that I've been seeing across multiple social media platforms. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but is this really even a theory? Because I saw numerous videos where people are saying the shooter, Naveed Akram and Sajid Akram, were searched up on Google Trends. And apparently they were specifically searched up and is not real. And this is not on the day of the attack, but just a couple of days leading up to it. Now, at first, I'll be honest, I didn't really believe it because my immediate thought was, are these guys really that dumb? Is their IQ really that IQ-less? But then I committed this self-inflicted kryptonite towards myself. We're talking about the same people that committed a G-side and tried to convince the whole world that they weren't committing a G-side, while we could all see that they were committing a G-side. But nevertheless, I decided to do the due diligence of searching up their names myself on Google Trends, and this is what I got. When I searched up Sajid Akram in the past 7 days in Is Not Real on Google Trends, there was a mysterious peak on December 10th, which was just a couple of days ago, at 3 p.m. And I did the same for his son, Naveed Akram, and on December 8th, there was a peak at 5 p.m. And this is not just like 1 or 2 people searching this up. It's just a mysterious amount of people searching him up all at the same time. Then I got pretty curious and I did the same for DC, for both of the shooters as well. So I searched up who searched up Naveed Akram in the past 7 days in DC, just to see if there was some sort of a connection. And lo and behold, Naveed Akram was searched up in DC on December 8th, 67 amount of times. I'm just not gonna memify this time, but just very questionable. They're doing it in a memeful manner as well. And then there was also another little spike on December 10th at 9 a.m. Now you could say this is all just a very big coincidence, but then I came across something that sent my suspicion into a spiral. Because one of the victims of the shooting did something very, very strange upon being shooted at. Because everyone knows it's natural human instinct. After being shot at and almost losing your life, the first thing you want to do is take a selfie, just to let everybody know that you almost stopped interacting with oxygen, right? That would be your normal human instinct. Now I might have to censor this due to the amount of blood on his face, but he is taking a selfie right after clearly being injured. I'm not questioning his injuredness because he looks injured, so I'm not going to create speculation around whether he's injured or not. On the surface level, he looks pretty injured. And hey, maybe he just has Logan Paul instincts to just record in times of death. The thing that makes this very strange is this individual was also in the October 7th attack. The New York Post shared this graphic and they quote him and say, "I lived in Israel the last 13 years. We came here only 2 weeks ago to work with a Jewish community to fight anti-Semitism, to fight this bloodthirsty, ravaging hatred." October 7th survivor wounded in Bondi Beach shooting after warning about surging Australian anti-Semitism. Now I do question why the New York Post would post something like this, because it definitely doesn't help the questions that people are posing. But I have to question this question. Is it just coincidence that this guy is always in the vicinity, or is he intentionally in the vicinity? Not only that, but instead of trying to take care of his wounds, the first thing he does is conduct an interview, because that's just what you would do after almost losing your life and being in critical condition. There's also an image circulating around of him getting his face painted, but again, I'm using their sources. I'm using his sources. This is from him. He tweeted this stuff. Now, whether this conspiracy is truly a conspiracy or isn't a conspiracy, and even though the villains in this atrocity are supposedly Muslims, they don't know the fact that the hero in the story is a Muslim. And I really wonder why that is. Because the same identity that was deleted when it saved lives was mysteriously amplified when it could be used to scare people. And this is unfortunately an example of how tragedy stops being about the victims and starts being used against Muslims.